What's going on, beautiful people? What's going on? Great day to you. All right. So I missed yesterday, and I think the day before yesterday. Been in motion, so I haven't been able to sit down and record and go live and practice in public as consistently as I would like. Well, I have some time this morning, so let's go ahead and get into it. We are finishing Chapter 7 of Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. We are finishing up Chapter 7, which is entitled Collaborate with Others. I hope you all are doing well, staying safe, and living your best lives. Living your best lives. And again, I hope you all are benefiting from the content that I'm sharing here. It's not my original content, but I figured I can curate it and pass it along to you all. So yes, we are continuing Collaborate with Others by Chapter 7, Collaborate with Others, Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. So let's get into it. Title of the section that we left off at is Find Your Fellow Misfits. And let me know if you can't hear me that clearly. It's a little windy outside, but these headsets are, I think, helpful. Let's do it. When Alfred Hare, a young black man living in South Florida, graduated high school in 1961, his dream was to become a millionaire by his 31st birthday. But how could he do such a thing, living in the segregated South at a time when African Americans had little chance of upward social mobility? At the same time, a white painter named A.E. Backus had been teaching art classes to a group of children that had included Hare ever since he was in 9th grade. Backus taught Hare the essentials to painting, but when the fledgling artist saw how much money his teacher was making, he saw an opportunity. Since Backus was charging $250 per painting, Hare thought he could paint 10 paintings in the same amount of time it took his teacher to paint one. Then, he could charge an affordable rate of $25, and if he pulled this off, he could make the same hourly rate as his mentor. It almost seemed too good to be true. While this was happening, another black man named Harold Newton was elsewhere selling Florida landscape paintings door to door, indirectly influenced by Backus. Newton had become a master at direct sales. When Hare saw Newton's door-to-door selling and the money Backus was bringing in, he combined the two strategies to start selling paintings door to door. He would collect the money even before the oil on the canvas had dried. By his early 20s, Alfred Hare was already driving a Cadillac. The people of Fort Pierce, Florida, began to notice how a young man in their community was making a name for himself with art, and soon others wanted in on the action. An attractive, charismatic young man, Hare enlisted 26 other painters in his money-making venture, all African Americans, none with any formal art training, and many just as eager to succeed. This group of painters came to be known as the Florida Highwaymen. The Florida Highwaymen shared a common aesthetic, with each painter bringing something unique to the group. They were young and energetic, and all very poor. Other than what Hare had picked up from Backus, they had no teachers except each other, or as the only female in the group, Mary Ann Carroll, said, they learned from one another's brushes. At night, they would get together and paint as many pieces as they could, then go out the next day and try to sell them. They'd go to real estate brokerages, stock market brokerages, courthouses, and banks, Gary Monroe, the biographer of the Florida Highwaymen, told me, and they would sell 15 to 20 paintings. They'd come back at the end of the day with 0 paintings and a pocket full of money. Who bought the artwork? Nearly everyone. The canvases appealed to the post-war audience that was flocking to Florida in the 1950s, dreaming of paradise. Through evocative scenes and bright, colorful sunsets, the Highwaymen's paintings spoke to the ideal of a better life and offered a sense of security, as if to say, everything is going to be all right. And the paintings, according to Monroe, sold like hotcakes. For some of them, it was money-driven. Art was a means to crawl out of the seemingly inescapable poverty that they faced every day. It was a chance to break out of that life and create a new one for themselves. Alfred Hare could paint as good as he wanted and as fast as he wanted, Monroe explained, but he wanted to paint fast because that made the money roll in more quickly. Other members of the group aspired to do more meaningful work with their painting, but regardless of the reason, all they had was each other. and they relied heavily on that community to help their art succeed. The highwaymen practiced together. They worked together. They went out on the streets and sold together. They even competed to see who could sell the most paintings each day. But no matter what, each member worked hard to support the group. These artists learned from and influenced one another in such profound ways that it's unlikely any single one of them would have succeeded alone. This was the early 1960s in the Deep South, and a band of black painters were challenging social conventions the civil rights movement hadn't even touched yet. They did not have any natural advantage, but this drove them to one another, and that collaboration made all the difference. In the words of Gary Monroe, Alfred Hare was living the dream that Martin Luther King was just about to commit to paper for his iconic I Have a Dream speech. These artists couldn't afford to work in isolation. They needed one another too much. Rejection brought them together. Even when they were competing, they were collaborating, spurring one another on toward success. The Florida Highwaymen produced an estimated 200,000 paintings during the course of a few decades. Though these works initially sold for tens of dollars, today they are worth thousands of dollars and hang on the walls of the homes of people like Steven Spielberg. Alfred Hare and his cohorts created something, albeit by accident, that was so powerful and interesting that historians have called it the last great art movement of the 20th century. The Florida Highwaymen were misfits. It was not easy for these artists to succeed at a time when black men and women were afforded few opportunities to advance in society. But they didn't let such inequities disqualify them from success. If anything, that fueled them. They used the fact that they were outcasts. It made them rely on one another. And because of that collaboration, they were able to accomplish something greater than each person could have done alone. Community made possible what was otherwise impossible for the individual. Let competition drive you. Most of us prefer the image of the solitary genius alone in his studio painting a masterpiece. This is what we have been conditioned to picture when we hear the term artist. Anyways, let me finish this up. When we hear the term artist, an artist works alone, right? But this picture of a man against the world is most often a myth. In fact, it wasn't even true of Michelangelo, the stereotypical lone genius. What drove him was not just collaboration, but competition. Renaissance Italy was not the quaint community of artists we see in Romantic times and thereafter, nor was it the collaborative community of the Impressionists in Paris or the Inklings at Oxford. It was the age of the courtier, when artists and politicians alike had to learn how to maneuver and manipulate their way into power. Manipulate. An awareness of who was around you and how to use those resources to succeed was essential. A sense of competition often drives our collaboration, even when we don't realize that's what is happening. To be creative, you must break away from what is expected, essentially competing with what has come before so that you can create something new. But you can't do this alone. It's too discouraging. So you connect with peers who share your ideals and who resonate with your work. After that, it is only a matter of time before you begin comparing your work to theirs. This is not a bad thing, however. This is how you get better. All art requires some level of healthy competition to make the creator a true master. And this requires some gumption, an attitude that goes beyond meekness, but doesn't quite become arrogance. Michelangelo was the perfect candidate for success in such a competitive climate. He was notorious for sizing himself up against others, constantly trying to prove himself. This began most notably with a public competition in 1504 between Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, an artist at the time who was more established and twice Michelangelo's age. Despite giving his best effort, Michelangelo lost the contest but never forgot the experience. For the rest of his life, he would strive to be better than his predecessors, to surpass the work of the greats who came before him. At times, we all feel a little competitive. We may even experience a slight twinge of jealousy of a friend's success or feel threatened by it. It does no good to wish such feelings away. Instead, use that energy. Let it drive you to create and do better work. You don't need to fear the accomplishments of others, but don't ignore other people's success either. Pay attention to what your peers are doing, and then let that awareness sharpen your focus so that you can improve. Great work does not happen in a vacuum. We must have an awareness of what others are doing and a certain level of competition to keep us sharp and continually growing as artists. What Michelangelo learned first as a competitor, that when you put creative people together or even pit them against one another, the result is better work. He eventually put to work when he undertook a massive project later in life. In the summer of 1525, when the artist was 50 years old, he was working on the Medici Chapel and Laurentine Library. More than 100 stone workers worked for him as he served as chief architect of the Basilica di San Lorenzo. He managed a messy work site, a large labor force, and a complex business operation. For the last 40 years of his life, Michelangelo oversaw hundreds of employees who helped him. He kept track of every detail, every scrap of paper, and recorded it all, even the purchasing of raw materials. He was an artist in the same way Steve Jobs or Jim Henson were artists. They didn't physically make each of the products for which they were ultimately given credit, but they are no less responsible for those creations. These skills of leading, managing, and collaborating with peers can be just as important in a creative career as the inspiration side of things, and no less creative. Hire help. Sometimes we need more than just a loose collective of peers to help us succeed. We need a more formal group of coworkers, a team to help us realize our vision. And that too is the job of an artist. After 15 years of working in a career in manufacturing, design, and construction, Caroline Robinson quit her job and launched a business. She had been a creative her whole life, but now it was time to go out on her own, and she intuitively knew she needed more than just herself to make that happen. Having carefully planned a career that would allow her to be arty and still make money, she decided to become a cartographer. I leapt in with 2 feet, she shouted in a delightful English accent from her home in Cornwall, United Kingdom. I don't know if I can do an English accent. But then reality set in. And 3 months in, I went, oh my God, what have I done? Oh no, I'm not really good at accents. That's something I'm going to have to work on, practice. Clear Mapping Company, our cartographic design consultancy, grew rapidly, and it wasn't long before success overwhelmed Caroline, threatening to swallow her creativity whole. Then she had to make an important decision. Would she be just an artist, or would she learn how to manage a team so she could get the help she needed? What Caroline did next is important, because this intersection is one we may encounter in our own careers, and what we do will very likely affect our work for years, maybe even decades. She didn't push through the challenge on her own. Instead, she reached out to friends and family, leveraging her personal network and hired help. When we imagine a full-time artist like Caroline, we probably picture someone laboring over a drawing board, alone, working into the wee hours of the night. We picture the final product, the book, the map, the painting. Whatever we picture, it probably looks nothing like the way Caroline Robinson actually spends her time, working collaboratively with her clients and employees. Today, Caroline manages a team of 3 people and is currently looking for a senior illustrator to add to her payroll. Her job, as she sees it, is to always be looking for new talent and future opportunities to grow business. The work she and her team does is not about credit, she told me. It's about the collaboration. I may start with a gem of an idea, she said, but by letting go and letting other people bring that idea to life, we end up with a better product. I don't worry about who is influencing the creative aspect because it's all about making it work for the client. When we work together, the end product is stronger anyway. Making a mastermind. Creativity needs collaboration. From the critical jabs of the Inklings to the friendly competition of the Florida Highwaymen to the more intentional leadership Michelangelo demonstrated with his 40-year assignment at San Lorenzo, what we learn from each of these artists is that without others' help, we do not produce our best work. The product may be a book or a church or even a map. Whatever it is, we won't do our best work without a community that understands our work and can hold us accountable. We need people who resonate with our art and have the courage to tell us when we can do better. 4 years ago, 3 people I barely knew got together and decided they wanted to start a peer group of local business leaders. Each person asked 3 other people to join the group, And that's how 12 of us started meeting together every week to discuss our businesses and lives. We've been doing it ever since. This group is not a collective of famous people or successful entrepreneurs. Most of the members were just at the beginning stages of their careers when it began. In fact, you could even say we are a bunch of misfits, not really fitting in anywhere else. So we formed a circle of a dozen peers and started meeting to share our hopes and dreams with each other. I can say, without a doubt, this group has been the single greatest source of professional and personal growth for me in the past decade. Something similar happened when I finally hired a handful of employees to help me run my business as a writer and online writing teacher. At first, it was hard, because I was accustomed to working alone. This is what we are told artists do, after all. But the more I embraced my need for community, the more I saw how powerful working with others can be. Creativity needs collaboration. If you want to do world-changing creative work, you must reconcile the fact that you likely won't be able to do it alone. You need help. Find your band of misfits, use the accountability of that group, and let your sense of competition drive you to create better work. Diane Gleyer's personal theory is that 92% of The Lord of the Rings was written on Wednesday nights because J.R.R. Tolkien knew on Thursdays he'd have to face his friend C.S. Lewis and account for his work. Lewis and the rest of the Inklings would ask where Tolkien was in the story he'd been telling them. "What did you write?" they would ask. And it's that expectation, Professor Gleyer said. There's a ferocious aspect to it, but there's also compassionate expectation that says, "You have this great idea. You told me about this project. You said you were going to drive this. How's that going for you?" And knowing that other people are out there, I think, makes all the difference. That wraps up Chapter 7 of Real Artists Don't Starve by Jeff Goins. I hope you all have a great and amazing day. I'm assuming that it's probably nice where you are. I could be wrong. It could be raining. It could be cold. I don't know. But if you have some time, make sure to step outside, take a breath of fresh air, and there are ants where I am. That's not good. But, try to avoid ants when you go outside. But have a great day. Enjoy yourselves. Find some time to do something creative, make something, express yourself, use and find an emotional release valve so you're healthy and you're protecting your mental. That's important because you want to be in a good mental health and mental state. So talk to you all later. Enjoy your day. Peace.